You've heard the name Putin. You've seen the headlines. But there's one city that almost no one connects to him. Vienna. One night, one hotel room. No records. No trace. But what happened inside room 237 may have changed the course of history. This isn't about politics. It's about a decision no one was supposed to know, and a man who walked in, then disappeared from every file. Stay with us. Because this story? It was never supposed to surface. Arrival without a trace. He arrived just after midnight. The kind of arrival that doesn't get logged. The receptionist didn't remember his name. The cameras were either broken or removed, no one really knew. All they could confirm, years later, was that someone, matching his exact description, walked into room 237 and didn't check out until dawn. There were no official records. No phone calls from the room. No dinner orders. Nothing. Just a figure in a long coat, wearing gloves indoors, walking slowly like someone listening for creaking floorboards. It was 1985, the middle of the Cold War, and Vienna was crawling with watchers. But that night, no one noticed him. Not because he was invisible, but because he knew exactly how not to be seen. That's what made him valuable. But why Vienna? Why that hotel? And why did he insist on paying in cash and using a different name? The answer, according to the only person who tried to investigate years later, might be connected to a man who was found dead 2 blocks away, at exactly the same time Putin walked in. But that part? It was never mentioned again. The dead man without a country. The man was found slumped in his car, engine still running, windows up, parked in front of an abandoned bookstore. He had no identification on him. Just a silver lighter with a scratched-out engraving and a watch stuck at 3:17 a.m. A single bullet wound. No blood trail. No sign of a struggle. Just silence. Vienna's police didn't rush the investigation. They'd seen this before, someone with too many secrets and not enough friends. But the strange part wasn't the death. It was what he had been carrying. Inside the glove compartment, a torn-up map of East Berlin, a typed page of names with 3 scratched out in red ink, and a cassette tape labeled for Olga. But the tape was blank. The car had diplomatic plates, but none tied to Austria or any embassy. When they ran the plate through Interpol, the system returned a single word: revoked. Back at the station, one officer swore he saw a man watching from across the street, smoking in the shadows. When they returned to check, he was gone, but the cigarette was still burning. Years later, someone dug into the records. The case had been closed within 48 hours. Cause of death, suicide. File reference, missing. In room 237? No one stayed in it again for 3 months. Then one day, it disappeared from the hotel's booking system entirely. The missing report. There was supposed to be a report. There always was. KGB agents never left gaps. Every move documented. Every meeting time-stamped. Every whisper catalogued. But for that night in Vienna, nothing. The archives in Moscow had folders on everything: hotel staff, local assets, even the janitor's political leanings. But room 237? No file. No record. No code name. One archivist, decades later, found a torn page wedged behind a cabinet. Handwritten. Faded ink. 3 words: do not copy. They tried to match the handwriting to field agents, but it didn't match anyone, except one profile flagged for irregular reporting: Putin's. When asked about the Vienna incident in a closed session years later, he reportedly leaned back, smirked, and said, "Some missions are meant to disappear." But rumors spread. That the man found dead wasn't a defector but an informant. That the For Olga tape contained a personal message. That Putin was sent to eliminate a liability, someone who knew too much. And what was on the missing report? No one knows. but someone tried to reconstruct it based on station chatter. A single line was all they got. He handed it over. Not voluntarily. Shadows in the archive. Archives aren't just paper. They breathe. They remember. And sometimes, they lie. Years after Vienna, a junior analyst in St. Petersburg stumbled across a misfiled folder labeled Cultural Exchange, Vienna. Inside were receipts, train logs, and a faded photo of a man stepping out of a black car. The timestamp? Same night, same hour. The man? Unconfirmed, but his silhouette matched the one seen smoking across the street. There was also a memo, partially burned, mentioning an unsanctioned trade. The last visible line read, "Asset compromised. Initiate silence protocol." The analyst tried to escalate it, but the next morning, his access was revoked. The folder gone. His ID deactivated. Within a week, he had transferred departments, voluntarily, according to the official note. But his neighbors said he left without a word. Not even a goodbye. The story resurfaced years later when a Western journalist visited Vienna, chasing whispers of Cold War ghosts. She never found the room, but she found the janitor. Old, hunched, and nearly blind, he remembered the man in gloves. "He tipped me in American dollars," the janitor said. "And he told me, this hallway never existed. What happened in that hallway was never written down. But everyone who touched it vanished or changed course. Sometimes, silence is louder than any file." The last line removed. Years later, in an interview that was never aired, a former intelligence officer was asked one question. "What happened in room 237? He froze. Not like he didn't know. Like he did, and wasn't sure if he should answer. Then he said, "Sometimes we don't send agents to gather information. Sometimes we send them to erase it." The footage was cut. The file marked confidential. But a leak years later revealed his next sentence. "And that night, something was erased for good. Not just the dead man. Not just the tape. But a decision, one that would define the next 30 years of geopolitics." In Putin's official biography, Vienna is mentioned only once. A short line about a diplomatic visit, no details. But the hotel was never on the itinerary. And the name of the man found in the car? Never appeared in any Austrian database again. It was as if he had never existed. Some say that's when it all changed. That the man who walked into the Kremlin years later still remembered that night. That hotel. That choice. And that silence. Because real power isn't what you say. It's what you bury. And somewhere in the shadows of Vienna, buried under layers of missing files, erased names, and rewritten truths, is the story of a night that still echoes in silence. Some stories don't end with answers. They end with erasures. What really happened in that hotel room in Vienna may never be known. But maybe that's the point. If this left you thinking differently about what power really looks like, hit that like button, subscribe for more untold moments, and share this with someone who still thinks history is written in books. Until next time, stay curious, and stay questioning.